When you're bringing something new into the world, there's inherent risk. There's simply questions that we don't have answers to yet. There's assumptions that we're making. Good entrepreneurs and innovators systematically eliminate that risk. And when we look at the lean startup process, that's what it's designed to do. It's a process that's designed around experimentation, where you identify an assumption or a hypothesis, you build a way of testing that assumption or hypothesis, you analyze the data, you learn from that, you adjust, and you continue the process. At this point, we have identified our core assumptions, which we are calling our hypotheses. And we have prioritized which of those we believe are the highest risk to the business. And now what we need to do is begin our experimentation. We need to start actually eliminating those assumptions that we have through evidence-based testing. So what we're going to do is take our top 1 to 2 assumptions and start to intentionally design experiments that will lead to evidence so that we can make informed decisions about how to proceed, optimizing the chance that our startup will be successful. Because after all, while supposing is good, finding out is much better. And so your goal for the entire semester is to start seeking evidence around the assumptions that you're making, around the unknowns that exist for your venture. In economics, we call this the difference between stated versus revealed preference. So I want to highlight some quick research that really brings this point out. There was a group of researchers that went into the College Quad, and they asked individuals, if I were selling carnations for $1 for charity, would you buy one? And over 85% of respondents said, of course I would buy a carnation from you for charity, because after all, I'm not a monster, right? We have an identity of who we think we are and how we want others to see us. 2 weeks later, they go out into the quad and they take their carnations and they actually try to sell them for $1 for charity. And when they measure the difference between what people said they would do, their stated preference, versus what they actually did, paying them for a carnation, the difference was stark. From 85% plus to around 45% conversion. And so this really highlights the importance of us designing tests that have people reveal their preference, not just state their preference. People will be very positive in how they state their preference, but it is very much creating a scenario in which they have to take action and show us what they would actually do. And the reason for this is not because humans are monsters or that we're all lying to each other. It's that we have a perception of ourselves and we have a perception of how we want others to see us. And we will do a lot, we have put forth a lot of effort to actually maintain congruence around the image we have of ourselves and how we want others to see us. And so we have a very favorable image of what we think we will do. And it's not until rubber meets the road and we're forced to take action that suddenly we see a difference there. And so this is a great example of why surveys don't equal evidence. Surveys have their purpose in counting things, but they don't actually help us understand people's behaviors or whether they want something and they're willing to pay for it, or whether it's creating value for them in some way. And so surveys in this class are not going to be considered evidence. And the other lookout that we have is we all have a bias. We want to be proven right. And so we're going to think about designing our tests in such a way that they validate the assumptions that we have. And we're going to really need to push ourselves to try to design tests that actually prove us wrong, because that information is much more valuable to us than actually being proven right. And the reality is, all of us would prefer a reassuring lie because it feels good, but what we want to seek is the inconvenient truth, because the inconvenient truth is where the real nuggets of information is going to lie, and what's going to help us reduce risk in our startup and give us the best chance of being successful. So as we start to design our test, what we might call a minimum viable product or a minimum viable test, the way that we want to think about it is not that we're giving our customers a wheel if we're going to try to build a car, but instead, what's the lowest fidelity way that we can give our customers the same value that they would receive, which is the ability to move from point A to point B, that they would receive if we finally got to the car. but what's the lightest weight way we can do that now? The cheapest way we can do that now. And so rather than give them a wheel, which they're going to be like, well, what does this do for me? Or two wheels, not terribly helpful. What we want to think about is, what's the skateboard? And once our user uses a skateboard, they're going to start to say, hey, that actually does get me from point A to point B faster. This is interesting, but I want to be more stable. And so you get feedback from them, and you add a handlebar so it becomes a scooter. And then they're like, this is great, but man, that one-legged action is really hard. What else could you do? And so you design a bicycle. And they're like, great, but man, I get really sweaty when I start using my bike. Is there a way to automate and make this less mechanical action for me? And so you design a motorcycle, and you continue this iterative process with the user, with the customer, until you get to the final solution that truly meets their need in a unique way. And so this is what we need to start to think about when we're designing our test is what's the skateboard that's going to create value for our users in the same way that our final version will, that we can really start to get robust feedback around. So I'm going to walk you through a series of tests, ways that other companies have tested for demand to try to get revealed preference, not just stated preference. These are designed to be inspiration. These are not the only ways to do it. I look to you and all to be creative in your process and how you think about doing this. But again, inspiration for how others have thought about this. A quick and easy one are ads. Either digital ads or even physical ads, to see if people will take action. Will they click on an advertisement or a link that articulates the value proposition that they're going to get out of my solution? The example to the right was Split. I actually found this in the hallways at Fuqua about a year ago, where they're asking users, potential users in their that fit their ideal customer profile, to take action. Will you scan this QR code, download the app, and start using Split, right? This is a great way to see, are people interested in our product? Is there demand for our product? Super cheap. Next up is having a landing page or a facade, as it were. And so the example for Tiny Earth Toys, which is a Duke-founded company, she built this website with Wix by herself over a couple days, a non-technical founder. And then she reached out. You see the little button that says reserve your spot. She reached out on her LinkedIn and actually just posted, I'm really concerned about the lack of sustainability in toys and the amount of plastic that this is creating in the world. And I'm going to create a circular sustainable toy subscription that I want you to be part of. And if you're interested, click this link to reserve your spot. And over the course of a weekend, over 200 people put their name down with their information to reserve their spot. But that's little more than a survey, right? We've not asked them to put money in it, money behind it. There's no skin in the game. So who knows if they're actually going to follow through. And so before ordering inventory, before taking the leap to invest her own personal savings, she goes back to this wait list that she's created and says, you indicated interest. Will you put down a $50 deposit to actually become a pilot user? And she got about a 20% conversion off that, right? So this gives her confidence that actually there is a demographic out there that's very interested in this potential solution and is willing to pay for it. And so with their initial money, the money that they put down to be part of the pilot and her investment, she ordered her first batch of inventory and got the business started. So a great way to take action. So there's no product yet. She did not have inventory. She had an idea. And she went and took action to validate, does anybody actually want this, and will they pay me for it? Superhuman did the exact same thing when they were starting out. Enter your email to get started, and then you have to reserve a spot, be on our wait list. So you're starting to see, is there appetite? Where is that interest coming from? Who are the types of users that are interested in my solution? Gaining another layer of information by actually requiring the user to take additional steps in assessing the value creation to them in a website. So this is an example for Buffer, and you can see that they lay out 3 different plans with 3 different levels of benefit and value. And then once you click on that, they've gained additional information about what are the features and benefits that the user values and how much are they willing to pay for it. And then you get this pop-up that says, hello, you've caught us before, we're ready. Enter your email and we'll get back to you when the product is built and ready for rollout, right? And so they're collecting a list of warm leads, but have gained additional information and insight before doing so. The Wizard of Oz prototype, or also called Mechanical Turk, is an awesome example. And so the story of Mechanical Turk is actually that Mechanical Turk was this box that traveled around the world that was amazing at chess, and it was basically it took on it and played Winston Churchill. They played Napoleon, and this magical box would beat all of these world figures and grandmaster and grand chess masters at chess, and it was magic. But what was really happening is there was a tiny man inside a box with mechanical levers and an upside down chessboard who was an actual chess master. And he would go in and actually play chess, and most frequently would win, which was, again, but no one knew that's what was happening. And so with the Wizard of Oz prototyping method, this is how you want to think about doing it. What work can you have happening in an analog or manual fashion behind the scenes that gives the user the same feeling of the value that would be created when everything is digitized? So an example of this in real life, IBM in the early 90s was working on the initial voice to text algorithms. And these are expensive to build at that time, very, very expensive to build. And they wanted to say, like, is there an actual use case for this? Will businesses, who is their core demographic of customer, will businesses actually see value in this? And if so, how? And so they didn't have it working yet, but they wanted to simulate this to get feedback from the user. And so we're in cubicle land in the early 90s. And so IBM walks in, and in front of one of the business professionals, they put a microphone, and their laptop screen is not their laptop, but their desktop screen is sitting there. And then they run cables. They run cables from the microphone and cables from the screen over to a room in the back. And sitting in that back room is an individual with a headset on. They can hear the microphone and a keyboard in front of them who is a very fast typer. And so as the user sits and says things into their microphone, the individual in the back room is typing as frantically as they can, trying to capture the voice to text that is now appearing on the other screen. And so IBM learns a ton from this experiment. Like, this is not going to work in an HR setting, because it turns out when you're in a cubicle talking about sensitive information and sensitive HR information is not a good use case for this technology. They learned about when users did value it. They learned what excited them about it. They learned what level of resolution or fidelity it would need to meet before it was of interest. This is an incredibly valuable tool before they continue to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into developing voice-to-text software. So a great way to think about testing, particularly in the AI space, where the AI might not be working yet, but can you deliver the same type of value or benefit to the user so they can get that experience, so you can learn about what they value most, and therefore telling you where to direct your time, energy, and attention. Next up is the concierge model. And we've seen this used in our class several times. This is where you are literally, it is a service-based model. You are doing everything, the human is doing everything from A to Z to really start to understand the user and what it's going to take to build a whole product that meets the user need. And so these are two students from the New Venture Develop class who are working on a food solution for diaspora community to be able to connect students who are away from home with individuals in the community who are from that same country or region who wanted to cook, and being able to connect them to have home cooked meals that taste like home and remind them of home. And you can see they order packaging off Amazon. They printed their own stickers. They literally they found people to prep the meals. They did the delivery. They learned so much about this experience, and specifically about the users and about the economics that would have to be true for this business to work by following the concierge model. Tony Hsieh of Zappos did exactly this. Many of you don't remember, but there was a world in which Amazon only sold books. And at that time, the idea of us buying anything and everything online was simply foreign and questionable. But Tony thought, hey, I think I can sell shoes online. But shoes are different than books, right? You have to try them on. There's a lot higher rate of return if they don't fit. And so Tony built a very basic website and then went down to the local shoe store, took pictures of the shoes at the shoe store, posted them on his website, and tried to sell them. And then what happened when he actually started selling shoes? He walked his rear end back down to the shoe store, actually bought the shoes, packaged them up, and shipped them out to the user. He learned a ton about this. First of all, he confirmed the assumption that people would in fact buy shoes online without trying them on. He also learned a lot about the return rates and what would have to be true for this business to succeed. Running pop-up stores, like at the farmer's market, can be a great way to get started and test demand and learn and interact with your potential customers. Tesla actually did pop-up stores as well. If you recall, Tesla was one of the first automakers to actually bypass the dealership, and they wanted to understand, would consumers actually buy directly from the manufacturer? And so they created these shipping containers with Teslas inside that they would ship around the world and do these pop-ups. And people would come in and ooh and ah over the car, and they would say, do you want to buy a Tesla? And people would say, of course I want to buy a Tesla. But that's like a survey. That's not really giving us information or revealing preference. And so then what did Tesla do? They say, great. Initially, it was put down a $5,000 deposit. And they were able to secure many $5,000 deposits to have first rights to buy the Teslas that were coming off the line directly from Tesla. It's proving that they could bypass the dealership and that there was demand for these vehicles. Really interesting concept to think about. But again, key part here is having the user increase their skin in the game, not by saying, yes, that's beautiful and I love it, but by doing something that hurts a little bit that shows that this creates value for them in some way. Everyone always says, well, this is great for consumer businesses, but what about business to business, where my customer is actually another business? Getting another business to enter into a letter of intent. So this is a non-binding agreement that says, if you produce a product that does X, Y, and Z, then we will in turn buy that product. So really getting that commitment. This is starting to evolve right now into design contracts where you're designing in partnership with a specific company, a solution that works for them while they are paying you for it, right? So this is again an evolution of the letter of intent, creating a design partnership, and many startups are starting to take, business to business startups are starting to take this approach. Moving beyond demand testing and really starting to test different options that are going to drive growth in sales. A/B split testing is a way to put two different versions in front of a user and find out what they respond to best. Airbnb did this early days when they were moving into new markets. When they moved into the French market, they both put out ads, but then they also deployed a team to go to local markets and craft fairs and other community events and actually sign up hosts onto the platform. And what they found was that more manual process of getting hosts on the platform worked best. And sure, it wasn't scalable in the beginning, but sometimes it's important to do the things that don't scale so you can get to the critical mass that allows you to approach growth through other scaling measures. And so again, how do you set these up so that you can understand which is going to work better, which is going to resonate more with your specific customers, so you can invest in the solution, the version that actually resonates most closely or meets the need best for the specific user. You can see this here in terms of putting timers on a website and understanding how it impacts buying patterns, or changing the marketing messaging to see what's resonating best with your customer. Again, running multiple versions of this really quickly, collecting enough data to say A is helping us, incrementally improve our conversion with our potential customers. So thinking about weaving A/B testing into the work you're doing. But I would be remiss if we didn't stop for a second and have a quick conversation about the ethics of testing. When I start talking about fake doors and Wizard of Oz models, people start getting really uncomfortable, and I understand and appreciate that. And so we want to be mindful of ensuring that we are being ethical in the ways that we test. So you will have to decide what you're comfortable with, but from my perspective, one way to think about it is the user still getting the value that they're expecting from me? And then secondly, what is the downside if I'm unable to, for that user, if I'm unable to deliver that value to them? So areas we should really think critically before doing any testing in health related areas, for example, anything in the health space or even in some cases where it might impact people's finances. So you're going to have to be mindful and make this judgment for yourself. And you should definitely, before you run a test, pause and say, do I feel good about this? Does the team feel good about this? Are we doing any harm to any customers or any other members of the ecosystem.